People often think narcissists only collapse because of themselves. But the truth is even more fascinating. They actually fall apart when faced with a very particular kind of person. The kind of person they can't manipulate, can't control, and absolutely can't stand to face. That person is the super-empath, the silent nemesis of those who live off fake admiration. Picture this: a narcissist storms into your life like a hurricane. At first, the sweetness that overwhelms you, compliments that make you believe you've found the most genuine bond of your life. They paint such a perfect picture that you don't even have time to doubt it. But then, the mask begins to slip. They make you question yourself, planting thoughts in your head that every problem is your fault. Slowly, you start to believe you need them just to survive. This is how narcissists thrive, through the illusion of power and by distorting reality. They build a stage where they are the only star, and you are cast as the supporting role revolving around them. They cleverly create dependency, making it seem like you only have one option: stay and endure. That's why so many believe no one can truly escape, that narcissists are nearly unbeatable. But that only holds true until they encounter a super-empath. Unlike the stereotype of a fragile, sensitive soul, the super-empath is someone forged by pain itself. They don't just feel emotions, they analyze them. They don't just listen, they observe. They don't just understand, they act. If the narcissist is a master at creating illusions, the super-empath is a master at exposing truth. They can walk into a room and instantly sense who's wearing a mask, who's hiding insecurity, and who's trying to manipulate others. And that's exactly what terrifies the narcissist, because their entire power depends on others not seeing the truth. Once that facade is stripped away, all that remains is the emptiness inside. In this story, you'll see how super-empaths quietly but powerfully shake the very foundation of a narcissist's world. No noise, no direct clashes. They fight with silence, with unbreakable boundaries, and with the ability to make the narcissist expose their own contradictions. And the most incredible part is this: anyone, through experience and awakening, can learn how to become a super-empath. From the very first moment, a narcissist knows exactly how to overwhelm you. They show up with a flawless face, dripping with charm and confidence. Their words sound like lines pulled straight from a romantic movie. Their gestures so gallant you're convinced you've found the one. They'll text you constantly, call you their soulmate, shower you with gifts, and promise you a dreamlike future together. This tactic even has a name: love bombing, and honestly, it's hard not to fall for it. But that mask never lasts. Once you've started trusting them, once you've become dependent on their compliments and attention, the script begins to change. The gentle smile hardens into a scrutinizing stare. Sweet praise twists into sharp criticism. And strangely, the blame always lands on you. If they're angry, it's because you disappointed them. If they grow distant, it's because you didn't care enough. Slowly, they warp reality until you're the one carrying the guilt. Imagine working with a colleague named Jake, the guy who constantly brags about his achievements, making you feel small just so he can shine brighter. That's narcissism in action, building themselves up by tearing down your sense of worth. They construct a world where they are the king and you're just a pawn on their chessboard. The danger here is that narcissists are masters of manipulation. They plant seeds of doubt, making you believe you need their approval just to exist. They pull your emotions like puppet strings, a little affection to keep you hooked, then sudden coldness that sends you spiraling, desperate to cling tighter. It's a vicious cycle. The harder you try, the more of yourself you lose. And yet this is also their greatest weakness, because not everyone falls into the trap. When they come across someone who refuses to play by their rules, someone who can see straight through the mask, the whole act collapses. That someone is the super-empath. They aren't swayed by flowery words or guilt-tripping tactics. They see the truth, that behind the proud exterior is a fragile soul, terrified of being exposed. To the eyes of a super-empath, The narcissist's mask isn't nearly as solid as it looks, and once that mask slips, the narcissist has nothing left to hide behind, just raw, naked insecurity. If the narcissist is a master at building dazzling illusions, then the super-empath is the one who can peel away every layer of deception with nothing more than a glance. But to really understand them, we have to clear up a common misconception. A super-empath is not the fragile, weak figure people often imagine when they think of someone sensitive. They are living proof that sensitivity is not weakness. It can become a source of extraordinary strength. Super-empaths have an uncanny ability to feel the emotions of others with great depth. But what sets them apart is this: instead of being swept away by the tidal wave of those feelings, they know how to analyze, observe, and act based on that invisible data. Imagine someone walking into a crowded room. Within minutes, they can tell who's faking a smile, who's hiding insecurity, and who's trying to manipulate the situation. But that's not some vague intuition, it's emotional intelligence sharpened to a razor's edge. Unlike narcissists, who lack empathy and exploit that emptiness to control others, super-empaths turn empathy into a mirror that reflects the truth. When a narcissist flashes a fake smile, the super-empath senses the tremor behind it. When the narcissist spins a grand story, they quickly spot the cracks. And when hit with manipulative criticism, the super-empath doesn't lash out. They watch, they remember, and they choose the right moment to act. Take Sarah, for example, a woman once caught in a relationship with a narcissist. At first, she too was swept away by the sweetness and the romantic promises. But as the cracks began to show, instead of simply suffering or reacting in anger, she started to observe. She noticed how he shifted moods when he didn't get his way. She caught how he cleverly twisted his mistakes into her responsibility, and instead of staying trapped in the victim role, Sarah quietly began planning her escape. In that moment, she crossed a threshold, from being vulnerable to becoming a super-empath. What makes the super-empath a narcissist's ultimate nemesis is the fusion of sensitivity and reason. They don't just feel, they understand. They don't just understand, they act. And it's action grounded in truth, not illusion, that shakes the very foundation of the narcissist's false power. Put simply, if the narcissist is a master of illusion, the super-empath is a master of truth, and truth will always be the light the darkness fears most. When people hear the word weapon, they usually think of knives, swords, or something violent. But to bring down a narcissist, you don't need any of that. The real weapons aren't physical at all. They're invisible qualities, things the narcissist will never have and can never learn. The super-empath carries 6 such weapons. They're quiet, subtle, almost unnoticeable, but when used at the right moment, they can throw the narcissist into chaos, strip away their control, and ultimately make them collapse on their own. Let's walk through each weapon, as if peeling back the layers of a gripping story. Weapon 1. Intuition. Eyes that see through the mask. Narcissists are famous for their masks. At first, they show up in your life with charm, sweetness, and promises that feel like a dream come true. But the super-empath's intuition isn't so easily fooled. Have you ever met someone who seemed too perfect, so flawless it made you suspicious? The endless romantic texts, the surprise gifts, the words that sound almost scripted, like they know exactly what you want to hear. For most people, that feels like a fantasy. For the super-empath, it's a red flag. Their intuition is like a radar. It doesn't scream danger, it whispers something's off here. And the super-empath listens to that whisper. They notice the details, the subtle shift in tone when things don't go their way, the quick frown when you accidentally disagree, or the urgency to lock down the relationship after only a few weeks. This is why narcissists fear intuition. Without their illusions, they're left with nothing but emptiness. And with intuition, the super-empath cuts away the narcissist's first line of defense. Weapon 2. Silence, cutting off their lifeline. A narcissist survives on one thing: your reaction. They need you to rage, to cry, to panic. Every time you react, their sense of power grows stronger. So what happens when you don't react, when you stay silent? Silence isn't weakness. It's one of the most devastating counterattacks. Because in silence, the narcissist suddenly loses their supply. Like an addict deprived of their fix, they begin to spiral. Picture this. The narcissist hurls cutting insults at you, hoping to make you explode. But you just sit calmly, your eyes steady, saying nothing. At first, they escalate. They'll try everything to provoke you. But when you remain silent, they start to falter. Their entire script falls apart. For the super-empath, silence isn't emptiness, it's a declaration. I'm no longer a puppet in your game. Boundaries, the invisible steel wall. There's one word that drives a narcissist insane. No. They're used to demanding and getting their way. They push limits little by little, today asking for more of your time, tomorrow demanding more sacrifice, and before you know it, you've lost yourself completely in serving them. But super-empaths are different. They know the power of boundaries. They know when to say no. And most importantly, they don't feel guilty for saying it. When the narcissist pushes, they meet a firm shake of the head. No debate, no long explanations, just no. That unshakable boundary is like steel, indestructible, and the narcissist hates it, because once you have boundaries, they have nowhere left to hook their claws. In psychology, we call this autonomy, but for narcissists, it's their worst nightmare. Weapon 4. Truth, the light that shatters darkness. Narcissists live on lies. They craft flawless images, hiding their flaws behind smoke and mirrors. They manipulate by bending reality, leading others unsure of what's real. But super-empaths carry the light of truth, and light always destroys the dark. What's remarkable is they don't need to shout the truth. They don't need a dramatic scene, just a calm, precise statement at the right moment. Imagine this. In a group of friends, the narcissist tries to pin blame on someone else to protect their image. Most people stay silent to avoid conflict, but the super-empath simply says, "Didn't you forget that last week yourself?" One question, simple, undeniable, and the mask cracks. Truth is the one weapon the narcissist can never defend against. It doesn't need embellishment, it just is. And that's enough. Weapon 5. Healing, turning wounds into strength. One of a narcissist's favorite tactics is keeping you wounded. They want you to feel broken, dependent, forever chasing their approval. As long as you hurt, they have power. But the super-empath knows how to heal. They turn inward. They write. They paint. They meditate. They open up to people they trust. They walk in nature, breathing deeply, remembering that the world is so much bigger than the cage the narcissist built around them. And little by little, they stitch their wounds back together, until one day they realize something profound. Their worth was never defined by the narcissist in the first place. When you know you're whole, when you no longer need them to feel enough, their control dissolves. And that's when the narcissist loses the very thing that feeds them, power over you. Weapon 6. Patience, the silent checkmate. This is perhaps the weapon narcissists fear most. They crave drama, instant reactions. They want to drag you into an emotional brawl where you'll lose your cool and they'll win. But the super-empath waits. They don't rush to argue, they don't scramble to prove themselves. They simply observe and then let time do the rest. The more the narcissist talks, the more contradictions slip out. The harder they try to manipulate, the more their mask slips. And while they twist themselves into knots, the super-empath stands quietly, detached. That patience is like an invisible rope, tightening slowly, silently but surely, until at last, the narcissist traps themselves in their own web. 6 weapons, 1 symphony. Intuition allows the super-empath to see. Silence starves the narcissist of supply. Boundaries keep them free. Truth shatters the illusion. Healing turns pain into power. And patience delivers the quiet checkmate. Each weapon is powerful on its own, but together they form a symphony, a harmony the narcissist cannot endure. And here's the best part. These weapons aren't reserved for a chosen few. Anyone, through experience, awakening, and learning to love themselves, can train to become a super-empath. When that happens, you don't just escape the narcissist's grip, you transform yourself into an unshakable fortress, where truth, peace, and inner strength reign. When we hear the word victory, we often imagine a dramatic battle with cheering voices and someone falling on the stage. But in the story between the super-empath and the narcissist, victory doesn't arrive with noise. It is much quieter. It is like the morning light slipping through a crack in the door after a long dark night. No noise, no drama, but impossible to resist. The narcissist believes they always control everything. They live by a ready-made script, planting hope, creating chaos, then keeping you trapped in a cycle of lack. But when they meet a super-empath, things no longer run smoothly. Silence replaces arguments, boundaries replace compromise, truth replaces deception. All of that slowly makes the narcissist lose balance. At first, they will increase the dosage. They will try harder, harsher criticisms, longer periods of neglect, even sweeter promises. But when the super-empath remains calm, the script suddenly becomes useless. And for a narcissist, useless means powerless. You can imagine it like this. An actor steps onto the stage, waiting for applause, but the audience stays silent. No boos, no cheers, just silence. For an ordinary person, maybe just disappointment, but for the narcissist, it is a nightmare. Many people think a narcissist will collapse like a bomb exploding, but in reality they collapse like an old building, bricks falling one by one in silence. First, their words lose weight. The sarcastic remarks no longer shake the super-empathy. The cold wars no longer make the other person panic. The empty promises are no longer believed. Then, their image in the eyes of others starts to fade. When the super-empath gently points out contradictions, the polished mask stops shining. Friends, colleagues, even family begin to notice the cracks. And then, the narcissist is stuck in their own web, because when no one believes, no one reacts, no one chases after them, all the power they once held disappears. The most interesting part is this. The super-empath's victory is not about seeing the narcissist suffer. That was never the goal. True victory comes the day they wake up and realize they don't care anymore. You can imagine that moment. After years of living in an emotional whirlwind, you finally sit down, sip a cup of coffee, look out the window and realize what they do, where they go, who they're chasing has nothing to do with me anymore. And that is freedom. And that freedom is the eternal victory. When a super-empath escapes the grip of a narcissist, they don't just escape a toxic relationship, they step into a journey of rebirth. They learn to love themselves in healthier ways. They rediscover passions that were once abandoned. They find laughter again in small things. And most importantly, they rebuild a life no longer revolving around pleasing someone else. Some find peace in meditation. Some return to music, painting, or writing. Some simply spend more time in nature, remembering how wide and beautiful the world really is. Each in their own way, but all meeting at one point: healing. The question many people ask is, so what happens to the narcissist in the end? The truth is, they rarely change. They may find another source of supply, they may try to replay the script with someone new, but one thing is certain, with the super-empath they have already lost. Not lost because they were exposed, not lost because they were punished, but lost because they were deprived of what they crave most: control. If you see yourself in this story, remember, you don't have to be born a super-empath to wield these weapons. You can learn to listen to your intuition, You can practice silence. You can build clear boundaries. You can choose truth instead of silence. You can heal by loving yourself. And you can learn patience to stay out of the emotional traps. Each small step, over time, will turn you into a super-empath in your own journey. The final victory is not watching the narcissist fall. The final victory is when you stand tall, calm, and no longer drawn into their game. It is the day you realize you don't need to prove anything anymore. You don't need their validation. You don't need their regret. You only need to live your own life, free, whole, and complete. And in that silence you have already won.